This episode is brought to you by a fourth grade fever dream. Before you listen to this episode of the podcast, please pause, go to Tubi. We'll wait. We don't have another episode till next week. Pause this, go watch Warriors of Virtue on YouTube if you want poor quality, Tubi for free if you want decent quality, and then come back and we're gonna be here to break it down with you.
If you want, I want you to tweet out your ideas to us. We're currently sitting at Screen Test Pod. So if you look up at Screen Test Pod, tweet out to us your thoughts on this film. What would you rate this film, and what was your favorite scene? Because there's about 15 scenes in this movie that are easily some of my favorite scenes in cinema.
Hello and welcome to Screen Test. I am Chaz, and with me, as always, is my co-host, one of the Warriors of Virtue himself, Aaron Milton.
Wow, that's one of the greatest honors I think you've ever bestowed on me.
I don't know if that's a compliment or a slight. Not physically, like looks-wise, you're not a warrior of virtue, but in your heart of hearts, you're a warrior of virtue.
I absolutely am. Now, this is a movie that shaped my childhood. So, the movie we're about to go over, we probably haven't even mentioned this yet. We're talking Warriors of Virtue, 1997's. I want to call it a hit, but it was both critically and financially a massive bomb. But in my heart of hearts, it was a hit.
Before we get there, I was just perusing this week and came across something that I found interesting, and I would like your input.
All right.
You may have seen this. I'm going to pose it as a question. If you've seen it, you're going to ruin my fun. According to a poll conducted by a company called Morning Consult, they polled over 1,000 people between the ages of 18 to 34 from a bunch of different nationalities and backgrounds. Who do you think the consensus was for Best Director for the ages of 18 to 34?
For what time?
What do you mean what time? Like right now?
Like right now. So they're saying as of today, this is the Best Director.
Best Living Director.
I know I'm going to say Michael Bay.
Interesting. They went with Timothy Walter Burton, Tim Burton. People between the ages of 18 and 34. And at first that made zero sense to me, but if you think about it, think about 34 and we'll walk our way back to 18. You got Pee-wee's Adventure, Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands, Corpse Bride, Sweeney Todd, Alice in Wonderland, Frankenweenie, and now Wednesday. So Wednesday's on the front of ththose minds of those little 18-year-olds, but this man has cultivated some childhoods.
This is still kind of interesting. Like, I understand you're like, you've got a way of reasoning this into making sense, but truth, I honestly didn't know he did Wednesday. That is complete news to me. I just assumed this was some young
Tim
adult.
Burton wannabe.
It doesn't even seem fully Tim Burton to me. It seems very
stop motion.
It seems very young adult to me.
This might be. So you said something that's the meanest thing you ever said on our last episode. This might be the meanest thing I've ever said. Wednesday seemed very CW to me.
Yes. No, that's exactly what I mean when I say it's very young adult. Like,
yeah,
this feels like not Tim Burton. It just doesn't feel Tim Burton to me. Like, I don't know any other way around that. That's just what it feels like to me. So that's very surprising to me because I spent maybe 3 minutes researching Wednesday, only because I was like, is this really as popular as everyone's talking about it being? And why would a spinoff of an Addams Family character be this popular? And that was all surprising to me. So I maybe did.
You've looked into this and still didn't know it was Tim Burton.
I mean, I didn't look who was directing it. I didn't care that much. I just kind of was interested in, is it actually good? Is it worth my time? And it did take me long to figure out, no, it's not really made for me. So all that to say, outside of Wednesday, he's been very quiet.
Yes,
as a director. And I would say he was far more influential, I think, on the earlier end of his career than the latter. Because who really likes the Alice in Wonderland movies? Like, I know they made a bunch of them.
Johnny Depp's banker.
Yeah, and they seem to have done financially well, but I don't know anyone that's watched them.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things that, like, it was financially successful and it's stuck around for a lot of sequels, and yet I know no one who, it made no cultural impact at all.
Right.
I mean, then you had, like, Planet of the Apes film that was the worst of all the Planet of the Apes films. So he's had these weird missteps. So it's somewhat surprising to me to hear that people would consider him.
You know what? I think a lot of that might actually be due to lack of knowledge. I think a lot of people, especially people who are going to go watch Wednesday, when between the ages of 18 and 34, when you say, what is something that has really been influential in your life as far as cinema goes, they're going to immediately point to what is called Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, which he did not direct. Henry Selick directed that. So I think because he claims that, he gets a lot of props that Henry Selick should actually get.
Yeah, and I think it's just, again, Tim Burton does have a certain flair and a certain touch to his films, and that, regardless, that movie has it all over it. It has Tim Burton's fingerprints all over it. So you could tell me Spielberg directed that movie, and I'd still think Tim Burton was basically making that movie. So, that's not very surprising to me.
Yeah, well, as you already mentioned, Tim Burton out there just putting his hands all in people's childhoods. One thing that I never had in my childhood that you did, Warriors of Virtue. And when I reached out and said, hey, Shrek, people liked our Shrek episode, so do you want to do another watch through? And you said Warriors of Virtue. I had no idea what I was stepping into. I'll start by saying you found this. You said, here, this is where we can watch it. It was a whopping 240p on YouTube, where the audio was completely off. People would say full lines with their mouths, and then the audio would kick in. But there was one point where I was like, I have to find this somewhere else. Something's wrong, and we'll get to that. But honestly, I had to pause this and do a deep dive within the first 1 minute. No actual frame of film had played yet, and I had to pause this and deep dive for probably a half hour. It took me 3 days to watch this movie.
It took me a little while. I know that. Thankfully, you saved my life there, because I was watching this on YouTube at 240p, because who was going to be streaming The Warriors of Virtue? No one was going to be.
Tubi.
So I had made it about 35 minutes into it. I also stopped it a lot to do some research.
Okay.
Because all the movie does is raise a million other questions. and keep in mind, Chaz, now this is probably the first time I've seen this movie since 1998, 1999. Okay. So I didn't even quite remember. It's one of those, you described it perfectly at the beginning here. It was kind of a fever dream. I know the movie existed. I know I had seen it, and I remembered very particular elements about it, but rewatching it again, it was a whole different experience. Like, just, we'll dive into that a little bit here, but when you said that, like, hey, by the way, check it out on Tubi. It's on Tubi for free. And I was like, oh, thank God. As soon as I pulled that up, it doesn't make the movie better.
No, I mean,
but it makes
work with what you got.
Yeah, it's at least I could see things, not in 240p. So it did at least help on that front. So if you do want to watch this movie, Tubi is a great way to go. It's free.
Tubi for free, and I had no commercials. I don't know what the commercial sitch is with Tubi. Do you have an account? Did you log in?
I want to say I did, because I went to Tubi to watch another film called Homebound, which was the director of Megan. He directed another horror movie before in Australia called Homebound, and it was on Tubi. So I think I created an account to watch that.
Gotcha. So you create an account, you get ads. That's what I learned from
I guess. Yeah, don't make an account. They give you ads.
So before we even get into the first frame, I'm always, when something like this pops up, I'm always 100% okay, who produced this movie? So that's where I had to pause and do a deep dive. By the way, we can do this however you want. I just kind of typed stream of consciousness notes. Yep. I have 4 pages of notes on this movie.
There's no point in breaking this movie down technically, like frame for frame, like we did with Shrek, where we kind of walked our way through the movie. To me,
I'm gonna be honest. I started doing that, and I can see in my notes where I was like, no, this doesn't work. It just gave up.
It's so scattershot. You kind of have to scattershot it a little bit.
Yeah. But first thing that pops up, MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, and Four Brothers Productions. So MGM, you know them from Rocky and Creed, James Bond, The Hobbit, Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind. So at first I was like, this is such an off-the-wall thing for them to produce. However, I had to reset my mind. This is 1997, and MGM also did Flipper, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Agent Cody Banks, G.I. Joe. So it's kind of in their lane for distribution. So that made sense to me.
Yeah, keeping in mind the year is actually really, really important to this. Now, why this stuck out to me, because 1997 is interesting because it's the latter end of the 90s. Obviously, it's 1997, so it's the latter end of the 90s. And in my mind, this came out a lot earlier. So that means I was 11 years old roughly when this came out. I don't know what month this came out, so let's just assume I'm 11 years old when this came out. I could have swore I was a lot younger. And think about what comes shortly after this. What type of films we start to get going into the early 2000s. Obviously, Shrek is coming right around the corner here. This feels so early 90s. This does not feel like a movie that should exist in the late 90s. I know there's just a big gap there. There's a big difference.
Well, obviously someone saw 1990 through 1993 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? And they said, let's make this movie, but we're a much. So MGM just distributed it. They didn't pay to make this movie. That was Four Brothers Productions, which, man, I had to do some digging to figure out who they were. They changed their name to Law Brother Productions, and they are credited with one film, and that is Warriors of Virtue.
So that, I mean, that's probably financially tanked them.
Well, I guess, or maybe they just went on to practice law. Who knows? But this is where I'm like, okay, I have not seen a clip of this movie yet, and my mind is already blown. So in trying to figure out who Four Brothers or Law Brothers Productions are, I did find that it was also co-produced by the China Film Co-Production Corporation, which is a subsidiary of the China Film Group Corporation, which is owned by the Central Propaganda Department for the Chinese Communist Party. This movie was made by the Republic of China Communist Party.
That makes a lot more sense. It makes a lot more sense once you kind of.
This was a communist propaganda film.
It worked for me. And now this makes sense why I turned out to be a communist. I grew up to be the perfect little communist because of Warriors of Virtue.
Oh, man. Just so we're all clear, though, other things that the China Film Co-Production Corporation have co-produced: Fast and Furious 7 and 8, Warcraft, Adam Sandler's Pixels, The Meg, Kill Bill Volume 1, Looper, and Her.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of like across the board, a bunch of random films.
Yeah.
There is a plane flying overhead right now, and my microphone wants to pick it up so bad. It's like, please, you need this right now. It's just lost its mind.
Do you remember when there was a helicopter outside trimming trees at my house?
Yeah. What's with this?
The air travel transportation stuff in this area. Crazy.
In the middle of the afternoon. Makes no sense.
A chainsaw hanging on an helicopter.
So yeah, this suddenly makes a whole lot of sense then. I also discovered that this film came out was obviously a financial bomb. I want to say it made under $10 million. It definitely did, at least domestically. I don't know if globally it did the same thing. But it did very poorly. I found out, in doing a little bit of research here, there is a sequel to this film.
Yeah, there is.
That came out in 2001. It was a straight to DVD, which, by the way, 2001 straight to DVD is such a perfect time for straight to DVD. I didn't even look this thing up at all, but
oh, I did.
I kind of want to. Huh?
I watched the trailer for it.
How much better is it than the original?
Oh man, you see no kangaroos. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. They are, if you go to IMDb, they're technically in the cast list, so I assume they're there somewhere. But it is awful. It's like what I don't want to throw any streaming ventures under the bus, but it's like the lowest tier of anything you'd see on a streaming service today.
Do you think they lost the Chinese communist money, and that was the problem?
They were not on that list, or that movie was not on that list of movies that they had produced, so they were not about this sequel.
Yeah, that's the Chinese gave up on it. They saw the first one, even they were like, crap, this is not worth our money.
Oh man, so Warriors of Virtue cost, let's see, budget.
I'm glad that I was able to expose you to this film.
Gosh, this movie cost $35 million to make.
I was hoping you'd say like Avatar levels of money. I mean,
$2 billion. What was that for? Ropes to keep people in the air? It is a lot of sets. A lot of like Willow or Star Wars size sets.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Massive. Yeah, worldwide it made $6.5 million.
Like, holy.
Not even in China. Worldwide it made $6.537 million. Domestically in America it made $6.524. So that means it only made $12,000 outside of the USA.
I love.
That's why China was out on this.
Yeah, they said nah. And somebody was like, "Can we do a sequel?" And they were like, yeah, right."
That money came from a re-release. Okay, man, this is the most wild thing. So the original $6.5 million came from the U.S. It was never even released in China. It was re-released in 2005 and made almost $12,500 in Italy, of all places.
You're telling me somebody in 2005 spent in Italy money to go see this?
Those poor little Italian children.
It's again, we haven't even really gotten into the film yet. This is just like we're literally talking about the existence of it. The fact that this movie even exists and everything that goes in behind it. And I couldn't tell you. I don't remember where I saw this. I don't recall if I saw this in theaters. I don't think I did. I think I saw it at home because it was very common for us to go to the movie store.
Blockbuster, you can name them. R.I.P.
And so that might be where that happened. I know this was we had a local video store where I grew up.
Of course you did.
Mom and pop place. That's awesome though, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's way cool. We also had Blockbusters. Chill out. It's just the one that was closest to us was mom and pop place. But I believe that's where I first saw it. And it's funny that you say, because it's very obvious this wants to be like Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
But, so that's very obvious. To me, the mix is kind of between three things. I say Ninja Turtles meets Neverending Story
Yeah.
with people that talk like Harry from Harry and the Hendersons.
Yes.
What is the deal with that?
Yeah.
Hi, Ryan. What is that voice? Who tested that voice and said, this is the voice we want? They said, well, we're going to have these giant roos talking, which they call them roos, which is awesome.
Yes.
I like
Yes.
that they're just straight up kangaroos. They're not like a weird hybrid thing. No, they just call them kangaroos. We'll get into how they look here in a minute.
Well, not even that. There are a bunch of people, 5
Yeah.
kangaroos, and then a rhinoceros and a bull. He's
Yeah.
the only living, like, I'm going to start my notes. Let's just talk through these, and
Yeah.
you just help me live through your childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
So we open on a mom leaving a house and telling the dog, just go watch my kid, please. That's the dog's job. I want the backstory of the training on this job. The mom drops all of her stuff in the driveway, and her command to the dog is, no look, Bravo. Like, don't look at me. She has taught this dog, when I'm embarrassed, you don't look at me. And then she says, go make sure Ryan eats breakfast. This dog goes inside the house, jumps on the counter, gets one single piece of toast, goes back outside to the bathroom window, drops the toast in the bathroom. This window is above the toilet.
Yeah.
How low is this bathroom, or how tall is this dog, that he can get his whole upper part of his body in the... What is the anatomy of this house? Is there a window like 2 foot off the ground, and then the rest of the bathroom is completely underground?
Yeah, obviously, or the dog flies.
Or the dog flies.
The dog could fly here. We can't completely rule that out of this. That the dog might be flying and levitating there, so that is a possibility. But how, also, again, sign of the times, how 90s is that dog?
it's the classic American 90s dog.
But you don't see that in a movie anymore, where the dog is kind of like this all-knowing being, all-knowing and all-doing being that just pops up at the perfect moments, doing the perfect thing, including flying and levitating on your bathroom window to drop a piece of toast on you.
That he's had in his mouth.
Yeah. He's gonna run around with this piece of toast. So let's be completely clear. That's disgusting.
Not only is it coming out of his mouth, but he drops it on... What is the last surface you're going to eat off of in your house? He drops it onto the bathroom floor. Eat your toast, kid, and like it.
In all fairness, we never see Ryan pick up the toast to eat it. So,
That's true.
In all fairness, I don't know if he ate it.
So Ryan is flipping through this comic book, and this is where I stopped watching on YouTube, because I thought, oh, well, it's low quality. I can't hardly hear it. The audio's off. So obviously a scene has been cut, and I missed something. So I do some research. I find it on Tubi. I start it. And we go straight from the bathroom to Kung Fu Kitchen. First off, who is this chef? Why is this child hanging out with this grown man in the back of a Chinese restaurant?
Dude, there's a ton of questions at this Chinese restaurant. My favorite move is when he goes to turn off the water by doing a flying spin kick to turn the water off. That's awesome. But is this not the busiest kitchen of all time? There's like 45 chefs in this place.
So many chefs. That was one of my notes too. Is how many does this restaurant seat? 5,000 people. Why are there so many people in this kitchen?
Like I've seen some cooking shows here, and usually, you'll get a handful of chefs back there. But I swear this is the largest kitchen ever created. And meanwhile, this guy's over here doing kung fu moves.
The only one.
Pots and pans. Yeah, only one. Only one. Just spinning around towels, exploding pots and pans with fiery kicks and karate chops. And it was like, what is happening right now? It's awesome. In the busiest kitchen in the world, too. It's not like, he's the only one back there doing this stuff. No. This place is bustling.
We leave the kitchen and then go back to the kitchen. The first time we're in the kitchen, there's only like 3 people in there. Yeah. The kitchen grows like 400% in between the times that we're in there. But we leave the kitchen the first time to go to a football game where Ryan tells them how to score and then immediately gets spit on, but his play works. And then they just happen, this one touchdown, they say they're getting beat, they can't score. They get this touchdown, and then they just win the game. Clock's over. It doesn't matter what the other team scored. How American is that, by the way?
But I have an issue with one particular thing in this scene.
Please tell me it's number 5.
No. It's with something the coach says. Oh, no. A player says it.
Okay.
A player says, their left tackle is blasting through our line.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm a football fan here. The left tackle plays on offense.
Right.
They're currently on offense. A left tackle would not be blasting through your line. That makes no sense. You could tell the Chinese made this film. Okay?
Yes.
That's also, put it that way.
I paused it here because the coach, somebody says, maybe it was when that kid said that, the coach looks directly into the camera and he says, trust me, kid, I've done this before. So I thought, oh, they've got a famous football player to come in here, and that's kind of like a wink to no, just looking down the barrel. Took a beat there for no reason. That was not a tip of the hat to anything. My thing with number 5 is we do this inspirational dun 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 dun. He's running slow mo. He hurdles one of the defenders, or maybe that offensive person who's playing.
Yeah,
defense.
the left tackle that was on defense. Yeah.
And then the shot is him hurdling one player while number 5 on the other team is right there. If you don't leave that shot, number 5 clotheslines that kid,
100%.
that quarterback, and he's out. It goes to Ryan for his slow-mo reaction. Too many things in slow-mo in this movie, by the way.
Dude, we will get to slow-mo. We will get to slow-mo here.
And then it cuts back, and number 5's just gone. They've teleported him to Tao or whatever. He's just gone, so they get the touchdown. So, hey, everyone cheers, but it's not for Ryan because, usually when somebody gets a touchdown, everybody's like, offensive coordinator! Why does he expect credit? I don't understand.
Yeah, he's like immediately bummed out.
Yes.
And then he looks at a girl and is sad, but that never develops into literally anything.
Nope.
No, it looked like at one point they maybe wanted a romance to exist here, but then they realized, wait, our movie takes place in another world.
We don't have time for this.
That doesn't work. So they just scrapped that one, I guess.
Oh, man. Chucky, by the way, one of the best people in this, probably the best lines in this whole movie. He calls out the quarterback in front of everybody for not saying thank you, because, manners.
Yeah.
And the quarterback has the fantastic line, did you say something or did you just fart?
Yep, that's a great line. Just a perfect line. Yeah.
Oh, man. So here, we're back in the kitchen with Mom. Mom makes this horrible brick of freezer meal.
It was lasagna.
I think.
Looked delicious, yeah.
And he says, when's Dad going to be home? Implying that Dad's a really good cook. Maybe a chef. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this Asian dude, I don't buy that this kid is half Asian, but this Asian dude is supposed to be Ryan's dad. Nope.
Yeah.
Mom doesn't even know his name. So,
why is he corrects her for it, right?
Yeah. Why is he hanging out in the back of this restaurant with just this random dude? There's never, spoiler alert, throughout this whole movie, never once is it said how these two know each other.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's no connection there. I guess the only thing he does is he hands Ryan a book.
I got real worried in that scene when we're just all of a sudden 13-year-old boy in a middle-aged man's bedroom.
Yeah.
Oh no! Well, what happened? Why are we here? Look at my cocoon, Ryan. What are we watching? What movie is this?
Also, the cocoon thing, man. What did that have to do with anything?
I was so confused, and everybody's like, "You can't play football," and then Ryan says, "Yeah, but you can't fly with a broken wing." And I was like, "What is everybody talking about?" And he's walking away, and he's got a brace on his leg. Did it show it before this moment?
Yeah, they kind of just dropped that on you, out of nowhere. They just kind of drop it out of you that he's pretty much good on one leg right now.
Yeah, I had no clue this was even happening. But the football team says, hey, let's go hang out in this obvious trap. And then we get the sewers with the spinning vortex of doom. Who in the world planned? Who's the city planner? Leave that open.
And this scene must have traumatized me because it's one of the few scenes of this movie that I've had this ingrained in my memory.
Yeah.
Where no matter how old I got, I remembered the whirlpool.
Yep.
And then the looks of the warriors. Those were the two things were ingrained in me. And so this scene was traumatizing as a child. And I know why. This all goes back to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Augustus Gloop.
When he gets sucked up that tube,
yes,
all I could think of is he drowned. He's dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
he's drowned in that chocolate and he is dead. And I just watched basically him slowly die going up that tube, and that's traumatizing. And so when I get to this scene, I'm like, if you fall in there, you are dead. That is a massive swirling vortex of
just
doom.
open to the public.
Yeah, and these kids are just like, haha, you gotta walk across it. And I'm like, okay, worst case scenario is you're dead. It's not even. It's not even like, oh, you might get hurt a little bit, or you might get a little wet. No, you're dead. That's it.
You're either alive or dead. Those are your two options. Someone flushes a toilet, and Ryan gets transported to Tao Mario style.
Yeah, straight up through the water. Also, a very weird transition. He falls in the water, and then you kind of see his legs floating in water, but you don't see his body. Is someone carrying him? It wasn't very clear.
Was it the Roo? I don't remember their names. The Water Roo. By the way, there's the Roos have different powers. We'll get to them.
Well, yes. It's because there's also a slight sprinkle of Captain Planet in this as well.
Oh yeah. I'll get to my thoughts on that. But Ryan is chased by ninjas. No knights. No ninja knights. I don't know. And here we go. Much like this episode of the podcast, it is 30 minutes in before you see a Roo. And even then, it's just his eyes for 10 seconds. Not even that, probably. And then it's gone. And you have to wait another 10 minutes to see a Roo in full body. So you're 40 minutes into this movie before you see a Roo.
Yeah, you get your first kind of glimpse at a Roo. And I'll have a lot of discussion about how they look.
Yeah.
But at that moment, I was like, they really look that ugly? I did not remember them looking that hideous. And then it got worse. It got way worse. But yes, you get your brief view of a Roo right there.
And as Ryan sees the Roo, is terrified. As he runs away, he realizes, oh, that leg that you just found out 2 minutes ago didn't work, it works now. And the first thing he does is fantasize that he's a quarterback that has fumbled the football. Is that just something that comes with the name Ryan Tannehill, or Matt Ryan? Is it if the word Ryan is in your name, you're a quarterback that fumbles the football?
Yeah, that was kind of. It's a very good point. Like, he immediately went to fumbling the ball, and it's like you don't really need like two legs to fumble a football. Like, it's not.
No, you could have done that before.
And I've had a little bit of a gripe with this as of recent, of watching things, or in this instance, I just finished listening to the audiobook for Cabin at the End of the Woods, or Cabin at the End of the World, which will be Knock at the Cabin.
Yep.
Coming out here. And one of the things I hated about it, and I see it here as well, is the reactions to something happening should be so much more... like, you fell into a portal, ended up in a different world, ran away from a kangaroo state person, and immediately decided to start pantomiming football?
Yeah.
Like, you're not at any point like, what just happened? That's also a very common gripe, because they do this in so many movies.
Yep.
Where you transport to a different world, but you think like, oh, I'm just being pranked. Yeah. And you're like, Billy, Johnny, where are you guys?
Elaborate prank.
Hold on. You're in a magical woods. Like, how are you
dry. You just got up out of the water and were dry. And you think they pranked you?
I hate that, because it's like, this would not be... Somebody wrote that. Somebody was like, all right, he's got to be confused. Let's have him call for his friends as if they're pranking him. How is that the best thought for this? But hey, that's what happens.
So Komodo is like if Shredder, and correct me if I'm wrong, if Shredder from Ninja Turtles and David Bowie from Labyrinth had a baby.
All right. So for those that don't know, Komodo is the villain in this film.
Yes.
Of everybody in this film, of every single actor in this film, this is the one that goes for it the hardest.
Oh, man. You watch progressively through this movie an acid trip.
Yes.
He starts off okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a point where he asks the general whatever, do I look good in purple? And then from there on, he's an insane person.
You're totally right. It progressively turns into something else. He looks exactly like Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance.
He does.
So imagine him, like uncannily, like very close to what he looks
crazy.
like, but very David Bowie-esque in that kind of androgynous, look like you said, do I look good in purple kind of thing. He's got that kind of weird element to him, but also just maniacally insane, especially as the movie kind of goes on a little bit, which I can't tell if that was done intentionally, if that was kind of part of the plot point, but there's not much plot here. So I'm going to just assume that this actor just progressively was like getting way more into this as he went along.
By the way, can I just say, I've already found out this is co-produced by the Communist Party of China. They're in a place called Tao. Dude martial arts all over that kitchen. And then they say the name Komodo, and I'm like, man, what kind of martial arts expert Chinese dude is about to walk out? And it is the most Scottish person. The actor's name is Angus McFadden. Can you think of a more Scottish name than Angus McFadden?
No, that is the most Scottish name of all time. And I did not remember him, so I didn't remember what he looked like. So I was just as surprised as probably you were when you're introduced to him, because he wasn't what I expected either. Keep in mind, back in those days, this guy would be Shredder-esque, right? Or even think about Power Rangers were big back then.
Yes,
he would have been in some big costume. We're talking about just some kind of wimpy-looking guy with long black hair.
Yeah.
Like that's
Are you talking about, when you say Power Rangers, are you talking about the straight up Rita Repulsa ripoff that's in this movie?
Oh, there is a version of that. That is true. with no real character development or anything. She just kind of shows up sometimes.
She's a snake, or she's a scorpion, or she's a spider. Like, she drools on people. She has sharp teeth. She has sharp claws. What is her deal?
She's a little bit of everything. That's also just a funny scene when he kills her. I think he kills her.
Yeah, I mean, I assume.
Are you still going through the film?
Yeah, we're still going.
Keep going.
Master Chung calls Ryan newcomer, and Ryan says, the name is Ryan Jeffers. And Master Chung straight up looks at the camera and gives it a Jim look from The Office. Like, this guy. I love that.
This guy.
And we are finally introduced to the Warriors of Virtue. I didn't mention Alicia, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
Because to this point, she's just there for exposition. She's just there to tell you, as the viewer, this is what's happening. But we finally make it to what may be the best, but also maybe the worst costumes in history of cinema. I love them and I hate them all at the same time.
There are things to be super impressed by. Again, as you're introduced to them, my goodness, are the ugliest looking things I've ever seen in my life. And it makes me think, like, immediately went through my head is like, wait, are kangaroos this ugly?
No.
And I realized, no, kangaroos are cuter than what they did with these things. They're monstrosities.
They're horrible.
Especially the female one.
Yeah, she's the worst one. It's like they tried to give her a shorter nose to make her feminine, but it made her more monstrous.
So scary. But you know what is super impressive in this film? But I think there's a problem going on here. What is super impressive about this is they can move very good in those suits.
Yes, they can.
And they're lumbering. I mean, they've got a massive tail attached to them. And the guys working in them were impressively nimble. In that introduction scene to all of the Ruse, all of the warriors, the one thing that popped into my head, and we've talked about this again before, with like when the Matrix came out, everyone did the Matrix thing, the bullet time kind of thing. If you remember, though, briefly after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out, everybody did the kind of flying around and then walking across things, but being able to just kind of float around.
Just touching stuff with your feet.
This did that. And that opening sequence of introducing to them, and I thought, oh, they took it from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. No, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out 4 years later.
I will say
Crouching Tiger stole from Warriors of Virtue. That is a
Crouching
fact.
Tiger, also made by the co-production company of China. So they've already had all the equipment to do it. So just hook these people up and let's do it.
I mean, I'm just saying, I just don't recall Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon giving credits to the Warriors of Virtue for that technology, but it 100% was the same thing. So it was all that stuff was kind of impressive. Like I was like, that's a lot of work to do all that stuff. They're just hideous looking.
Let's talk. You said we'll get there. Let's get there. Anytime there's a fight scene, actually, anytime a leaf comes into the air, the low frame rate destroys me. It kills me. I can't stand it. Out of everything, that should not be my biggest gripe. Everything else should be my biggest gripe, but that is my biggest gripe.
There are two things that happen. All right, so when we're talking about on the cinematography side, to me, I have two major issues. The crazy low frame rates, especially during action sequences, but sometimes they must have done this to not be jarring. But like an action sequence isn't action from start to finish. You usually have like in between shots to fill it all out. They would keep the low frame rates across the board, which makes sense, right? You don't want to pull people out, put them back into low frame rate, but it's a weird decision. I wonder, so this is my gripe number one, I wonder if they had to do that. It makes me wonder if the Ruse actually fighting didn't look great in real time. And the only way they could do it is by doing the sequence.
I'm going to tell you what it looked like to me. It looked like they were actually doing those fight motions slowly. Yeah. And then the film was sped up, and then they put a low frame rate to it, so it kind of brings it to the middle to make it look like the film is slower, but the actual movements are faster.
It's what makes me think that's why it's like that. And it does it other times that the Ruse aren't on there, but I think it might have been like a consistency thing. And that was an issue number one, because it looks awful. It was an incredibly dumb look, and I didn't like anything about that. The other one is, I swear the cinematographer and the director said, let's make sure no shot is straight on. Let's just make sure
Dutch angles, baby.
We're gonna put but it's not even just Dutch angles. I mean,
it's everything
all over the map. They're literally taking that camera, shoving it up in some corner, and then twisting it sideways. And they're like, perfect shot. It's constant.
Yeah.
Every other shot is just at this angle that you're like, what were you doing? Like, how bored were you to where you're just like, you know what? Again, no straight shots here. We're going at every single angle. Those two things on the cinematography front is just maddening in watching this film.
There's one scene where Master Chung is talking to Ryan, like before the final battle, and the angles, like the tilt and how close they get on that old dude's face, make me so uncomfortable. Honestly, let's talk about uncomfortable. So we've made it into Komodo's descent. Let's talk about the drug scene between Komodo and Alicia, is how I'm going to say her name, because I think that's what it was. The dude who plays Komodo at this time, Angus, is 34 years old. Alicia is 23 years old. And Ryan is 13 years old. This is the most out there, uncomfortable love triangle of all time.
Do you think that's what they were trying to do?
I feel like, that's my takeaway.
I mean, again, it felt like
Angus was getting real close to some ladies' faces.
Yeah, yes. But I'm going to say between Alicia and Ryan,
it
felt like maybe that's where they wanted to go very early on, but they barely interact with each other in the rest of the film.
Right.
That I wouldn't necessarily call it a love triangle. I understand.
Until Alicia's ready to kill for him.
It's also a weird sequence there as well. Was she bad the whole time?
Yeah, I guess.
So, I don't.
Oh, I forgot to mention that one of the leader of the Ruse accidentally killed somebody, has put himself in a life of exile, and Ryan is able to talk him out of exiling himself after having a conversation basically with a tree, not even him, for 1 minute and 16 seconds. Oh. From the time he says hello to the time Yin or whatever his name, or Yun, says, let's go. It's 1 minute and 16 seconds. And all he does is say, you're weak, and no wonder everybody gave up on you.
Yeah. And then when he gets back and sees the other Ruse, they're like, you're back. He was like, yeah, Ryan convinced me. So I was like, how did Ryan do anything? Ryan didn't do jack. Nothing happened.
Ryan yelled at a tree.
There is so little. Not that it's surprising. There's so little character development. Like,
Yeah.
like offensively low amounts. Like to the point where these Roos meet Ryan, barely have a conversation with him, barely even discuss what is going on, why he's there, how to even get home. Very little even gets discussed on, hey, I would like to go home someday. I'm stuck here. And yet they call him like a friend and want to defend him. And I was like, you don't know him. You know nothing about him. He just existed one day and all of a sudden this is happening. But there's just no development in that. Just like with Yun coming back. It's like he just basically talked to the air or talked to a tree and he's like, well, you convinced me. Coming back. I just exiled myself. Not anymore. Because you said people don't like me.
Yeah. So the Roos have this ability, almost like the Last Airbender, right? Avatar, where they can control or manipulate certain things. You've got wood, water, earth, fire, and steel. So, man, it would be really dumb of the bad guy to drop a steel-controlling kangaroo in a giant pit of steel swords.
It would have been dumb.
And that's exactly what happens. And guess who's the most scared of the pit?
Him.
The kangaroo that can control steel. I was so confused by that.
If I recall, the Roos only, I should stop calling them the Roos, even though it's kind of fun to call them the Roos. They are the warriors of virtue after all.
The Roos.
They only fight once in this film, right?
Yeah, at the very end. They move around a lot, but
they move around.
Really only fight.
That's the thing. Is they're not really actually getting into a whole lot of fights until the very end. That's it. Which, also, another question. Sorry for spoiling this film for anybody that wanted to go see this film, but this is a massive spoiler on this deep Oscar-worthy film. At the end of the film, they have this mega power.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah. Did I miss that? Was that ever discussed?
No. Let me see if I can find it in my notes.
Like, where the heck? Why did you do that at the beginning?
Oh yeah, my note just says, "Oh, so they had magic medallions this whole time."
Like what? What was that?
And even the way he says it, it's like, "Oh yeah, we have these."
Yeah. Oh right. We can just blow this whole thing up. We can literally win in 2 seconds.
So good.
Oh
man.
Like, what was that? That was crazy.
There is one curse word that's said like 5 times in a row.
There's technically 2 curse words, but you are right. A product of the 90s. This is rated PG, and there's some blood and some cursing.
That was the best part of this is, so he pretends to read the book. He said, and we're categorized as clean podcast, so we're not going to say
we're family friendly.
We're family friendly after I said acid trip. So 4 different people say this curse word, and then Tubi decided in the upper left, I don't know if it did it for you, in the upper left-hand corner, rated PG, just slowly faded into the screen, and then faded back out. Like remember I needed to be reminded.
Yeah, different time when you could actually swear a little bit in a PG film.
That was so good.
It was, like again, product of the 90s. This is what you get. Also, another scene that I just absolutely loved. At the end of, or towards the end of the film, soldiers come marching in a Tau, and it's at least very much implied, slaughtered people in front of other people.
They were killing people,
They were, right? I'm not making that up. They were killing people in front of other people. And then at the end of the film, they're just like, let them go.
They're all friends.
Like, they're all like best friends now. And I was like, you literally just committed genocide in front of these people. They were just like, we're cool. It's cool now.
That's
like,
amazing.
What was that? It wasn't like they just captured them. It wasn't like they just took them over. No, they slaughtered.
Swords. Yeah. Swords ran across people's throats.
And I was like, we're good.
When they do take Tau, by the way, why does the girl kangaroo, why does her power have to be flowers? That's sexist.
I don't.
His power is a wooden staff.
Honestly,
his
all
power
their powers were kind
is
of
a
lame.
steel ring. His power is a match, I think. His power is he's close to water sometimes. Her power is she can throw flowers at you.
The only one that's kind of cool, obviously, like the metallic ring is kind of cool.
The only one that's destroyed.
That's an actual weapon. But I liked when they did the whole sequence with the guy with the fire and he's swinging around the sparklers. I was like, that's kind of cool. But
it would have been cool if he used it in a fight and not just trained with it.
Yeah, they were absolutely useless. Also loved that idea is that they realized like Komodo is just a guy.
Yeah.
So then when they got to the final fight, the only time the Roos really fight, the Warriors of Virtue actually fight, they're like, what are we gonna do? That's 5-on-1. Why don't we just multiply Komodo for some reason? Let's just multiply and make 5 of them.
Yeah.
So that way they can fight 5 Komodos. And if that's the case, why doesn't he just make 20 Komodos?
Right.
It doesn't make sense, but that's kind of how this film goes.
Yeah. So my next point that I had is there was character development in here by Mudflap or whatever his name is, the dwarf that got pinned to the wall. Yeah. He was physically and verbally abused throughout this whole film, and he's the only one who has that change of heart. Here's your watch back. The Warriors need you. You need to get up. And he says, if I didn't write this down, I probably should have, but he says something along the lines of, get out of here, you 2 foot tall creep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what he says.
Horrible.
Yeah. Probably would not be allowed in movies today, but
No, this guy, he's the only person who has any character development. He's changed sides, and he gets
why
called a
does he even
2 foot
change
tall creep.
sides?
Who knows? It's
like,
just
he
needed
literally
it for
just
the
sold
script.
him out for money.
Yeah.
And then just decides not to?
He read ahead in the script, and he saw which side was going to win. So,
Yeah.
let me...
Like, there was no reason to do that. Also, another... Gosh, like, the people writing this just couldn't think beyond, like, the next 2 sentences. Like, they just couldn't do it. But when Master Chung looks at the general, and he says, you know the truth in your heart,
Yeah.
I was like, that'll be important.
Nope.
He never was. He tries
Also-
to kill the Ruse 2 scenes later.
Another thing he said to him is, we used to play together, and the general says, on different sides. What does that mean? When do you,
I don't know.
as a child, when did you play with another child and think, we're playing together, but we're on different sides?
Yeah, I don't...
What does that even mean?
I don't know. I don't know anything happening in this film. Nothing in it made sense. Literally, when they made this movie, they were just like, we want Ninja Turtles.
Yeah,
How do we
Ninja
make
Racing.
our own Ninja Turtles? And this is all they came up with. This was it. They didn't even give them like a cool thing to eat, like pizza. So
Right.
they weren't eating like tacos out here. They were just
No.
nothing.
Ryan, I did take note of this. Ryan had the line, looking for this, remember me, I'm your friend, and I'm proud to be your destiny. That could have been the hottest rap line of 2000 or 1997.
That would have been pretty sick.
That was solid. And here's my note. Oh, they had magic medallions this whole time.
Yeah.
Good thing they remembered that. It's like the back half of this movie. The creators were like, okay, how do we make sure no one ever franchises this? And they just
Yeah.
go nuts with it. Steel Magnolias, don't know his name. The one who doesn't talk. Also not the one who killed someone. He just
No.
took a vow of silence for fun.
For some reason.
He says thank you, which was sweet, and they do their little handshake. And then he goes back to the real world, and Chucky has the line, let's make like Tom and Cruise.
Yeah.
A highlight of
that was
the
pretty
movie.
sick. That was pretty sick. So he doesn't fall in the whirlpool. It's like right before he does. Because I was about to say that this movie, Ryan is actually dead the entire time.
Yeah.
And I think he still might be. I think he actually died in that whirlpool. This was just some like last flinching memory fever dream that he had.
Yeah.
But to me, everything fine. When you get to the end, though, right? When you get to like the final conclusion and when you're wrapping up this film, he looks at the cocoon, which again, I was like, what does the cocoon have to do with anything we've learned? The whole idea was, don't take somebody from their journey. Okay, did that happen? He opens the jar and it's, what does it say? Like,
Spread your wings and fly.
spread your wings and fly. Like, what? What lessons were learned here today?
Yeah,
I don't know.
that was-
Or the line to his mom. How was your night tonight, honey? Virtuous.
Virtuous.
What?
My mom would have been like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Why
what?
would you say that?
What do you mean virtuous? How does she not ask more questions about that? Listen, my
Right.
kids say weird things, but I'll tell you right now, tonight, if I say goodnight to my child and say, hey, how was your day today? And they went virtuous, I'd be going, in what way was today virtuous? And break that down for me
In
right
what way?
now. In
It's
what way?
amazing. I'm still stuck on Chekhov's dad here. So Chekhov's gun. If you put a gun on screen, fire that gun. You mentioned dad twice in this. This kid's dad doesn't exist. He's nowhere to be found.
Or it's one of the ruse. I'm not
could
like,
be one of the
completely
ruse.
putting that out of the picture here. The Ryan is some weird hybrid human rue. I'm not dismissing that as a potential theory.
Okay. There is no Inception-like link. I kept waiting on it at the end to give a little wink that this was all real.
Yeah.
Like
saw Shooting
when he
Star.
opened that cocoon, I was like, okay, there's gonna be something in there. He's gonna see something.
Yeah.
No, this was straight up a daydream this kid had before
Yep.
walking on that pipe.
Yeah. Virtuous.
None of this was real. It's like Click. Spoiler alert for the movie Click. When you get to the end of that movie and figure out it was all a dream the whole time, and you just wasted 2 hours of your life.
Yep.
That's what this was. To end us off, any last thoughts before I do this?
This movie was
Best movie ever?
was better and worse than I remembered at the same time. I'm glad that this movie was awful.
Yeah.
Because it makes it that much more enjoyable to kind of rewatch it and to just remember those bits and pieces that I saw as a childhood. Which I'm gonna guess most people listening to this, it sounds like I'm in the minority because nobody saw this film.
I'm hoping that everybody paused this at the beginning, went on Tubi. Maybe I'll insert this. Listen, before you listen to this episode of the podcast, please pause, go to Tubi. We'll wait. We don't have another episode till next week. Pause this, go watch Warriors of Virtue on YouTube if you want poor quality, Tubi for free if you want decent quality, and then come back and we're gonna be here to break it down with you.
And if you want, I want you to tweet out your ideas to us.
we
We're
got a
currently
Twitter.
sitting at Screen Test Pod. So if you look up at Screen Test Pod, tweet out to us your thoughts on this film. What would you rate this film, and what was your favorite scene? Because there's about 15 scenes in this movie that are easily some of my favorite scenes in cinema.
You want to know what my favorite scene was?
Which one?
When Komodo, this warlord from another world quotes a 70s movie from our world and says, "Warriors, come out and play."
There's so many good moments. If you're really just sitting there, it's a constant like, what? What's happening? What was that? It's so much of that.
Well, since you brought up reviews, to close out, I have 5 reviews from Letterboxd for Warriors of Virtue.
All right, go
Would you
through
like to hear them? It wasn't until, look at that. It wasn't until Angus McFadden screamed, "Warriors, come out and play," that I realized the nature of the mistake I had made. The second review, phenomenal. Absolutely perfect in every way. 2 stars, that's the perfect review for this movie.
That is absolutely the perfect review. It is so great. 2 stars.
Yes. It is one of the most, is it one of the most underrated films of 1997? Why, yes, it is.
Oh, that could be true. Nobody saw it. They might have missed the gem.
Number 4, it peaks early with kung fu cooking, but then quickly becomes ugly and hard to watch. Fair.
Also true. These are all factual. All of them.
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Google does not know about kung fu cooking.
She's like, no clue.
Every now and then my Google just likes to yell at me.
He just yells at you commands?
Sorry, I don't know, okay? I didn't ask, but okay. And then last, for your consideration, Angus McFadden, best performance of all time in any medium.
This is exactly what I'm saying. If you watch this film, he goes for it. This guy took this role incredibly serious. Nobody else did, but he went for it.
I don't know if they should teach this in film class as like a method of acting, Angus McFadden, or they should teach this in film classes as an actor's descent into madness. But either way, you've got to teach this in film class.
Oh, yes, you do. There is something to be learned here. Absolutely.
Oh, I didn't even mention at the end, he just shows up. Did they wipe his memory? He's like, "Hey, guys, can you help me get home?" And they say, "You are home." And the sun shines, and he's got this stupid smile on his face.
My guess is the reason why they did that is because the whole point of the film is you don't take a life or you lose something of yourself. So my guess is, even though they clearly killed him, he's clearly dead. He randomly shows up with his mind wiped for some reason. It doesn't make sense. And he's there. That's the only reason why I think they did that. Because other than that, he's straight up dead. Yeah. He is dead.
Oh, man. What a fantastic time. 3 days of my life I'll never get back. 3 afternoons.
You're welcome.
Evenings of my life that I'll never get back.
You're welcome.
But I'm all the better for it.
Yes, you are, Chaz. I'm glad that you're at least able to live through one of my childhood memories. You're able to experience it. And I'm sure this is something you'll pass on to your kids and their kids and their kids for generations. Every Christmas, family, let's gather around and watch ourselves Warriors of Virtue.
I want to put out a challenge to you for our next episode.
Okay.
And if you don't like it, I'll delete this audio. But this can even be on your list. How about the next episode? We're both somewhat children of the 90s. I was very young in the 90s. That was my 0 to 10.
I get it. I'm older than you.
But what if we revisit? Let's do a top 10. I like doing top 10s. The top 10 best, worst movies of the 90s. Warriors of Virtue can absolutely be on that list.
You know what the problem? Here's going to be the issue, though. The only thing I'm going to have a hard time with is, like, I'm going to have a hard time remembering if something is actually bad or if it's good. Because in the 90s, I loved it.
That's the thing. Don't rewatch any of these. Just gut feeling. We're doing it off nostalgia. We're not doing it off actual value.
I know. We can't do that. We've got to do it off of just our guts. And, okay. Yeah. I can do that.
Chaz from the future here. You just heard that, right? You just heard Aaron agree to the best of the bad 1990s movies. Because, like I said, I'm from the future, and we've already recorded the next episode, and that is not what he brought to the table. So I need you to remember this moment when you go into next week's episode, and Aaron has completely decided to do his own thing. All right. Oh, sorry, that's the dog. Back to the present, which is the past, because I'm from the future. Podcasting's weird. All right, next week, we will dive into our top 10. So what we do, we each bring a list.
TV and movies, or just?
Let's just do movies.
Okay. Can do that.
If we just do movies, that gives us another episode that I don't have to write.
Because I got a whole bunch of TV stuff to talk through too. So TV was made in the 90s.
Maybe we'll just spend this month in the 90s.
Yeah, it's true. We could.
All right. Well, for now, that's all I got.
See ya.